All right, so for these next examples, we're just going to go through how to graph linear equations with restrictions. So in these first set of examples, remember anytime we're given one restriction, we're going to have some type of ray, so an endpoint with an arrow going to either the left or to the right. And then we need to make sure we're paying attention to whether the endpoint would have an open circle or a closed circle. So if it's going to be a closed circle, we need to have that bar underneath that. So both of these would have closed circles for the endpoints. And then when it's this symbol, it's an open circle. And remember, if it's one of the greater than symbols, the ray should be going to the right. One of the less than symbols, the ray is going to the left. So I'm going to show you number 4, and then I would like you to practice the next ones on your own. So there are 3 different methods that we could use to approach these kind of problems. So the first method is the erasing method. So if you're going to do this method, you're going to want a pencil. And what we're going to do is we're just going to graph this line like normal and then erase the part that we don't need. So I would start up at 3. And then my slope is 1, so up 1 over 1. And then I want to make sure that I'm making light marks and that I'm putting a lot of points on both sides of that y-intercept just to make it a little bit easier. Okay. Now once we do that, we're going to identify the endpoint and whether it should be open or closed. So the endpoint has to be at 2 and then it's going to be closed. So I'm going to go to 2 on the x and then I would either go up or down until I hit the point. So in this case, I'm going to go up. I'm going to make this a closed circle, and then I have to decide if I'm going to connect it going to the right or going to the left. So if it's the greater than symbol, that means I need to connect going to the right. So from the endpoint, I'm going to connect it to my next point going off to the right, and then I would erase the extra points. So if you like that method and you want to use that method every time, you are more than welcome to do that. The second method, using the T-chart, is the one that I usually do every single time. So if we're going to use the T-chart method, so T-chart x and y, your first x value is always whatever this number is. And it doesn't matter what this symbol is. So even like on number 6, if we were looking at this, whatever this number is, that's the first number that I have to pick. So for number 4, I have to pick a 2. Okay. The second number we pick based on the inequality symbol. So since this is greater than 2, that means that I have to pick a number bigger than 2. And it doesn't matter how far away you go from 2. Usually you want to stay a little bit closer though, so that way you're guaranteed to be on your graph. So if I have to pick a number bigger than 2, I'm going to choose 3. But 4 or 5 would also have been acceptable. Okay. So now looking at this, so 2 is my endpoint. So if it helps off to the side here, I know it's going to be a closed circle, so I can kind of mark that off to the side to help remember. And then to get the y values, we're just substituting this into this part of the equation one at a time. So if I substitute the 2 in, 2 plus 3 is 5. And then 3 plus 3 is 6. And then I'm just going to graph those 2 points. So I would go over 2, up 5. Here's my endpoint. Over 3, up 6. So here's my second point. And then I would still connect them from the endpoint to my next point going to the right. Okay. Now, the third method is we're doing all this work in our head and we're not writing things down on paper. So I would caution you to do this because if you do it this way, you're more likely to make a mistake. So to start with, I would really recommend doing the erasing method or the one where you're doing your T-chart. Because at least this way, you know if you had the right points and you accidentally graphed them wrong, whereas you might have just completely messed up your line by trying to do too much in your head at once. Okay. Now, if you are just going to do it in your head, what we would do is we would start with the endpoint. So looking at this, I would decide that my endpoint's going to be closed. I'm going to take whatever this number is, substitute it into the equation. So 2 plus 3 is 5, so I would put my endpoint there. And then if you wanted to, you could do your second point in there, or we're just using the slope. So if I have a slope of 1 from my endpoint, I'm just going up 1 over 1, and then I'm connecting my line to the right. Now, where the most mistakes tend to be made in this method is when we have a line going to the left. Because if it's going left, you have to remember to do your slope backwards from your endpoint. So I would recommend, if you're going to do this method, you only do it when your graph is going off to the right, because then your slope is just normal. Okay. All right, so go ahead, pause your video, and then I would like you to answer 5, 6, 7, and 8. All right, now as I work through these, I'm going to use the T-chart method. And then I might do a couple of them using that third method that we talked about. So again, for T-chart, I'm always picking my endpoint, and then I'm picking my next value based on the inequality. So less than 2, I would want to pick 1. And my endpoint is going to be a closed circle when I graph it. So to get the y values, we're just substituting these in one at a time into our equation. So 2 plus 3 is 5. And then 1 plus 3 is 4. And now I'm ready to graph. So over 2, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then over 1, 1, 2, 3, 4. So endpoint to second point. And again, your second point is always closed. So only an endpoint can be open. And again, to double check, this tells me again I have a closed point, and my ray should be going to the left because it's less than. All right, next one. So this time I'm starting with -1, and then less than -1, so a number smaller than -1 would be -2, and my endpoint is going to be open this time. So now I can start my substitution process. So -1 plus 3 is 2. -2 plus 3 is 1. And now I'm just graphing. So -1 up 2, open circle. -2 up 1, connecting endpoint to that second point. And again, I know I at least have my array going in the right direction because it's less than, and it should be going to the left. All right, so on number 7, I will go back and add my T-chart in, but just so you guys can see that third method. So again, I'm just going to substitute -2 into this part right away. So -2 times -2 is 4, and then 4 plus 1 is 5. So -2, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, open circle. And then from this point, I'm just going to take whatever my slope is to get the next one. So I can go down to over 1, and then I would connect those together. Okay. Now I chose that method because I know it's going to be an array going to the right, so the slope would just be normal. If you did it using your T-charts, so I would pick -2 and then a number bigger than -2, so -1, and then we would have substituted those in. So again, that would be 4 plus 1 is 5, 2 plus 1 is 3. Okay. And then these points match up with that endpoint and that second point that I got. Okay. All right, last example. So going back to the T-chart. So 2, and then I need to pick a number smaller than 2, so 1. And then substituting that in. So that would give me -4 plus 1 is -3. And if I substitute 1 in, -2 plus 1 is -1. And then my endpoint is going to be closed. And this one would have been open. All right, so 2, 1, 2, 3. And then over 1, down 1, and connecting them together. All right, so in the next video, we'll go over how to do it with 2 restrictions.